You're listening to the Australian Hunting and Beyond podcast with Matt, where we talk about hunting, shooting, fishing, camping, and everything else that the great outdoors has to offer. Let's get into it. Okay, so we've been talking about the upcoming Sambar trip, and I thought, well, we had a bit of a misfire the first time, so I thought I'd jump on with Vinnie and see if we can sort all the technical glitches out and get you on, because bloody hell, mate, it's been a while, but you just keep knocking over the Sambar left, right and centre, don't you?
I try and be best. Like, it doesn't always go to plan, but yeah, when it does, it's good.
Mate, I love your Instagram because you just keep posting, and I appreciate you tagging us as well, because I just sit there and go, freaking hell, look at the size of that thing again. And so we originally had you on talking about your clothing stuff. Do you want to fill everybody in on that?
Yeah, so Board and Barrel Co., we started up that last year, just more as sort of a test, like just a, something to do sort of thing. We slowed right down over summer, but hoping to get back into it later on in the winter and start making clothes again.
Because you guys sold out pretty quickly, didn't you, when you said your first run?
Yeah, no, we were actually shattered about that. Like, it sold real quick. I think about 2 months it was all gone. So I'm gonna have to start that up very soon. Probably
a good problem to have though, if you're thinking about it.
No, 100%.
All right, I want to pick your brain tonight because going away with Frank, I've had him on the podcast a few times now, and he just went down and did Errol Mason's course, and he's pretty confident with himself that he's going to be on point for this one. And there's been a lot of sledging going on in this hunt group that we're going away with a couple other people. And I need to do something, because if I get something before him, geez, that would be just unreal. And
that sounds like mateship.
Yeah, well, that's it. I just want to stir him up. I actually, in fairness, we're going away with a couple other mates and family members of his, and if I can get one of them onto a Sambar before him, that's even better. I think I don't even need to shoot it. I think it would hurt him more if his brother or his cousin got it. So that's my big ploy here. I really want to work out how I can help them get onto it. Yeah, mate. Yeah. You are, as I said, you're knocking them over all the time. Give me some tips. Help me out here.
Well, look, Sambar hunting can be, it can be so different for everybody. Like, I know myself, a few of the boys I hunt with, like my old man even, we've all got crazy different styles of hunting. You know what I mean? Like, some people enjoy hunting areas where there's just deer everywhere, whereas I prefer hunting areas where there's probably a little bit less numbers, but the country's a lot better, because it's no secret, Sambar love the thick shit.
Yep.
And you'll find areas where it's full of deer is normally thick, normally rubbish to walk through.
Yep.
Whereas when I first started, I was pushing through all that, thick crap, and I was seeing plenty of deer, but struggling to get shots away.
Yeah.
Whereas now, sort of nowadays, I'm looking for the more easier hunting. I'm not pushing through shit. The deer numbers are a lot less.
Yeah.
But with that, I can see. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to be able to see what you're shooting at the end of the day.
And it was only after I started doing that, I started to pull heads out, really. I was always shooting hinds and whatnot, but I found that you're better off hunting where the numbers are a touch less, but it's easily huntable. You know what I mean? Because you only need one.
That's it.
You know what I mean? You only need one. And look, for me, Sambar, patience. You can't fool a Sambar's nose. It's no secret. You need that wind right. I feel like you can get away with everything else to an extent. You can get away with not wearing camo. You can get away with a little bit of noise. Sambar very curious, but one thing you can't fool is the nose. And I learned that very, very quickly. So as long as that wind's in your face and there's deer in there, there's a good chance you're going to stumble upon one.
Have you found any patterns that are the sort of the keys to your success that, is it a morning hunt? Is it a late afternoon? Is there anything there that you attribute that to and go, I really want to do that more often?
Yeah, personally, I've always loved my afternoon hunts. Like, anyone that knows me half well knows I love hunting my afternoons. Like, after work, I'm out, most days. But I started shooting a lot of deer when I really started paying attention to the sun, because 90% of the Sambar hunting we're doing is in the middle of winter, and after a cold night, everything wants to get warm.
Yep.
So hunting those east-facing slopes in the morning is, for me, it's a huge game changer. Huge game changer. I mean, there's no use being in the bottom of the gully when there's frost. The deer want the sun. So jump up on the east. And in the Arvos, the same thing. West-facing slopes, get that sort of last sun going down.
But that makes sense. Like, just you think about us, if you're cold, you want to warm up. So I understand that logic, and it definitely makes a lot of sense to me. Do you find when you're glassing the slopes that they like a specific sort of area? Like I've had a lot of people tell me that around the 3/4 mark is a good place to sort of look and start.
Normally for me, I'm hunting 2/3 of the way up the face and higher. Hunting, and I'm going to be honest, 95% of the time chasing heads. So I'm really chasing that sort of last third of the slope, because 95% of the good deer I'm seeing are way up there, way up the top. And in saying that too, I mean, that's the first place the sun's hitting, in it, right up top.
Yep.
And I find the deeper we get into winter, the more time they're spending up there.
Yeah, well, they need to get the most amount of sun. So
that's right.
Yeah, that makes, it's just logic, isn't it?
That's right. So I try and spend as much time as possible way up top. Yeah, pretty much my hunting in winter revolves around the sun for me. Warmth and wind for me. That's what it is.
Do you hunt on the face, or do you hunt glassing across to it? So you're taking that shot across the gully?
I personally like being on the same face as the deer. A lot of people I've hunted with tell me I shouldn't. And Look, depending on the country, I probably shouldn't. But I like being up close with them. I don't know what it is. It's just me. But there is some tight little gullies. Like, I find the bigger the gully, the more I like being on the same face.
Okay.
Whereas if they're real tight little sheltered gullies, I like being on the opposite face. For whatever reason, I'm not too sure. I don't know if it's because the wind can swing around a little bit better. I don't know what it is. But I've always preferred being on the same face.
I like the idea of shooting across the gully. Just to be able to glass more area so you can see more to then help out. But I get getting on the same face and stalking through slowly. That's exciting too. Yep. And I mean, so you talked before, you said, hey, you really chase 95% of your hunting's going after heads, and you've had some good ones. What have they been ranging size-wise?
Last year I had a great year. I shot 3 good heads last year. One went 30 1/4. Another one I shot with real good Shanghai tops. He went 20, I think just shy of 29 or 28. I also shot and lost a thumper last year, which I was spewing about. I tracked him till about 2 a.m. with a good mate of mine. Couldn't find him. But so that one was 28, the one with the big Shanghai tops. Another one I shot went 30 1/4. And I hunted with a few buddies of mine last year, and they shot some 25s, 26s. So we had some good deer hit the deck last year, that's for sure.
So that big one, that 30 1/2, mate, tell us the story. I'm a sucker for a good hunting story.
Yeah, so that one there, a buddy of mine actually rang me and said, listen, we're doing a trip into here, X location. And I've never hunted in there before. I said, you know what, I'll come, suss it out. Who knows? I might shoot a big one, you know what I mean? So I went in, the first Arvo, went for a little walk, and I got pointed in direction from a mate of mine where he shot deer in the past. Anyway, I finished my hunt, saw a few hinds. I took a video of a little stag that afternoon, about a 24, 25-inch stag, and I passed him up. Finished my hunt, got back down to the fringe, and I'm walking back to camp, and I'm walking along the base of this system, sort of on my way back, and I caught a set of prints out of the corner of my eye, and it looked like a cow. They were huge. I saw some big rubs in there, and, pretty much that's all I need to see. So I went back to camp, told the boys, I'm like, listen, I saw this and this. I'm going to go hunt there in the morning. They're like, yep, go for it. So I was up before the sun came up. I made my way from the camp to this system, and I remember it was foggy as, real foggy. And I'm walking along this fence, and I'm probably 250, 300 meters off jumping up into the gully, and the fence was pretty much running through a big patch of tea tree, sort of hard to explain, but the fence was running parallel to a thick patch of tea tree. And I remember catching the rear end of a deer about, probably 100 yards off. I couldn't see the head, so I dropped to my knee, got the binos, and it was foggy. It was very hard to make out. But after 10, 15 seconds, the deer actually turned and started walking along the tea tree. And when I saw antler, I almost choked. I'm not going to lie. I almost choked, Doesn't matter how many you see. A big stag gets you excited. I don't care who you are. So, anyway, the binos went back in the harness, got the gun off my shoulder, and I'm waiting for the deer because he's sort of weaving between the tea tree, and he's being a prick, I'm not going to lie. He's weaving between the tea tree, and he actually disappeared behind the tea tree, and there was a gap to my right, and by now, he's like 30 yards away. He's close. and I saw a gap to my right-hand side, and if he passed through that gap and I didn't get a shot, that was it. He was gone. Because he would have jumped in the berries, which were on my right-hand side, and he was gone. So he's come probably at 20 yards, passed through this gap, and he heard me flick my safety off, this deer. And as he spun to take off, like didn't honk, didn't even look at me, he heard the noise and he wanted to go. So I flicked the safety off. As he spun, my crosshairs lined up, like really hard quartering away, like sort of like right in front of his hip bone, and I squeezed the trigger. That was with a 7mm Rem mag, and the projectile stopped on his brisket. And he took off, heard him crash. I think he went about 40 yards and piled up. But yeah, no, he's by far my best deer so far.
Yeah, nice. How do you go about picking your areas? Like, so one of the things I've been lucky enough to catch a few on the trail cameras and but I'm at a loss as to where their wallows are. And I'm sort of trying to work out where am I going to try and find those. Do you chase them? Do you look for them? Is that how you get onto your sort of areas that you know there's going to be a decent stag in there?
For me personally, I don't do much in the way of trail cams, and I don't put many up. I mean, I have put them up in the past, but over the past couple of years, I sort of don't anymore. I've always preferred getting in there, like walking myself in, picking a spot on the map, walking. If there's no deer, I pick somewhere else. I haven't really relied on trail cams or Google imaging and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to wallows and stuff, I feel like walking gully bottoms for me has always worked, finding wallows. But personally, I don't hunt wallows. I find them, a lot of the times they can be inconsistent. So, a lot of people I know sit and wait off wallows and stuff like that. And don't get me wrong, it works. But I find sitting and waiting off well-used game trails and like preaching trees and stuff like that, a little bit more, something that's a bit more consistently used, for me, a little bit better. I mean, yeah, you might get a cranker of a stag, walk 20 metres in front of you and have a wallow, but I feel like having a stag walk past and touch up a preaching tree might be a bit better chance for you.
And that's the thing. I was thinking, it's going to be cold. Winter's around. There's a good chance of snow and things freezing over. The last time I was there in winter, all the water was frozen.
Yep.
So that I sort of sit there and go, I'm no expert on Sambar by any stretch of the imagination. I can't imagine them wanting to jump into an ice bath.
Well, funnily enough, I've actually seen a stag jump in a frozen wallow before.
Yeah, right.
That was a few years ago now. It was a real cold morning up in high country, La Cola area, and all the puddles on the track were all frozen. And I was glassing a face up there where I knew there was a wallow down low, and I watched the stag through my binos jump in the wallow and break the ice, believe it or not. Yep.
Right. It sort of contradicts what you talk about with the sun, though, isn't it? Like, everybody knows that's where you want to hit. You want to hit those faces to get the first sun for them to warm up. And then hearing about that, it's sort of the total opposite, which is and look, hey, as I said, I'm by far the opposite of an expert when it comes to Sambar. So just hearing these different things, I always question myself as well, like, do this, and then when you get out there, I don't follow through with some plans because I change them because I feel they're not working or something along those lines. So when you're talking preach trees, can you explain a little bit about them and what you generally see when you're finding them?
Preach trees. So preach is a tree that, well, not only stags, I've seen hinds use them too. They get on their back legs and they rub their scent glands up as high as possible, so that if another stag or another deer comes through, jumps up and has a smell, for example, if a big stag goes up there, jumps up, has a rub on his face on the tree, and then a young stag comes through, jumps up, has a sniff, you might think, oh, he's big, I better get out of here.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Vice versa like that. I find them a lot. I find where I'm finding well-used game trails, a lot of well-used game trails. I find that if you can find a spot where 3 or 4 game trails meet, pretty good chance you'll be a preach around there. You know, because I feel like from past experiences, I feel like a preach will be where a lot of the deer sort of get funneled to. You know what I mean? Like bottoms of gullies, almost every time there's going to be wires down there because, a lot of deer do feed on the bottom. I mean, I said I'm always glassing up high in the morning and whatnot, but there is a lot of deer on the bottom. But for me, all the heads are up there. But yeah, I enjoy hunting and seeing off preachers. It's worked for me in the past.
Yeah. Game trails, you said well-used game trails. I've heard a lot of that they love to use them and they don't really venture too far off them when moving. Are you going down the trails? I know a lot of people don't like to do that because of their scent getting spread on that trail.
Personally, I love walking them. I've always walked on the game trails, especially in the dry months of the year. Might make you just that little bit more quiet. Yep. And when it's steep, as your game trails are a lot flatter, if that makes sense, a lot more level, a little bit easier to walk in. For me, man, if it's going to save you breaking your ankle, do it for sure.
I mean, the beauty of hunting is everyone has such a different style and a different way and how they run with it. So I always like to hear everybody's way and story and see what works for them, because what might work for them might not work for me, but it might as well. So it's one of those tricky sort of areas. Do you do much sitting and waiting? I'm horrible at it. I get so impatient, and it's probably a cardinal sin, but it's just not how I like to hunt personally.
I do a lot of sit and wait hunting. Personally, I think that sit and wait hunting is far more productive than stalking deer up. I just find that sit and wait hunting, if a deer does show itself, I feel like the success rate is so much higher, because 95% of the time the deer comes out, doesn't know you're there. You've got time, and you're not going to sit 5 meters away from where you're expecting the deer to come out. You're going to sit 70, 60, 70, 100 meters away. So you've got a little bit of leeway for movement, get ready, get steady, take a shot. Whereas if you're stalking Sambar, I find, 70% of the time the deer's onto you way before you even know it's there. So when I'm chasing a bit of meat for the freezer and whatnot, sit and wait hunting for me is by far the best. And funnily enough, last year, that 28 I shot with the big tops, I was sit and wait hunting for him, and he walked up to me at about 10 meters, and I shot him like that. So it works, definitely.
Oh, I get it works, and I don't have the patience. I sort of sit there, and that's probably in my mind. I've got to get better at it. I've said that a lot, is that I sit there and go, all right, I haven't seen anything in half an hour or 45 minutes.
Yep.
That's me maxing out and going. Then I start questioning, maybe it's a bad area. Maybe I need to go explore and see if I can find a better area and sit and wait there in a different morning or different afternoon or whatever it might be. So how did that come about? That 28, was it 28 incher you said?
Yeah, he's probably my favourite stag, I think. I think he's up there.
So how did he come about? Like, had you scouted the area? How do you're saying you sit and wait and it works, and I get that, completely understand. Are you finding sign and things like that and coming back to it? Are you finding sign and just going, all right, I'm going to sit here? How do you go about that side of it?
So where I shot this bloke, I've hunted this area for quite a long time. It's a private block, small private block. And I've seen deer from my car walk in and out of this patch of bush, first thing in the morning and last night, almost every day religiously. But I'd never actually sat there over, the last few hours of light to see what comes in and out. So a buddy of mine rang me and said, listen, I need some meat. So we went separate ways. He went one way, I went the other. And I thought, I'm just going to go and sit on this game trail where they come in and out. And I was in my trackies and my jumper and my work boots. I wasn't anything fancy. I went and sat there. I sat there for probably, I think it was about 2.5 hours. And a buddy of mine, I heard my mate take a shot. So he shot one. I'm like, yeah, beautiful. So I actually taken the bullet out of my gun. So I'm sitting there. I thought I'll just wait till dark, see what comes out. All of a sudden, about 30, 40 meters in front of me, he must have been bedded there the whole time. It's about the only thing I can think of. And I can hear him smashing a tree. Like, it sounded like an elephant was walking through the pines. By now, I've put the bullet back in the gun and I'm waiting for him to step out. And to my left, a hind and a yearling's walked out about 30 meters, and I'm standing in the open with my gun up. And I'm praying, keep going, keep going, keep going. So they did. They kept going and they circled back behind me. And this was another situation where I had a gap of 3 or 4 meters, and if he passed through that and I didn't get a shot, I really don't think I would have shot him. So I can hear him smashing the trees. He's coming close, and I've got my crosshairs in this gap. And I just remember through the crosshairs seeing antler. So he's walking from right to left. I remember seeing antler, drop the crosshairs down to his shoulder and squeeze the trigger. This is in probably half a second. And when I squeezed the trigger, I just remember a shitload of dust coming off him. So I knew I'd hit him well. Actually never heard him crash because in the pine it's real soft on the ground. I gave him about 20 minutes, half an hour, followed him up, and the blood trail was insane. I'd never seen a blood trail like that in my life. So yeah, found him, and he was 28. And I think that's the closest I ever shot a deer. I'm not going to lie. I think about 7-8 meters. I think it was 10 meters.
It's got to be a very adrenaline-packed moment having something that big so close to you.
Yeah, I actually, I think I posted a video of that. I think I took a video after I pulled the shot, and I was struggling to hold myself together a bit. That's for sure. Shaking like a leaf.
Understandable. So, mate, you talked about then a bedded down, like the deer was bedded down.
Yep.
Do you, well, again, I'm showing my inability as a deer hunter here.
That's all right.
Do you go searching for where they're bedded down and start looking for those areas in the morning? Is that one thing you do, or?
Personally, not, because I find in the morning they're up out of their beds and chasing the feed in the sun.
Yep.
But, it's no secret. A lot of deer, most deer will bed from halfway up the face and up higher, which is where I'm typically walking anyway, 2/3 or higher. So I do find a lot of bedded deer, but personally, I've never looked for beds and really paid attention to them, which is probably a fuck up in my, But no, I never really have.
Do you use any callers? Do you run like the Flex Mark or anything like that? Have you?
I have in the past, and look, I've called in plenty of hinds and plenty of spikers and whatnot, but for me personally, it never worked on a stag. Like, I had tried to call a stag in, and he turned and took off. But I do know people who have had success on big stags, so I'm not going to say they work. I'm not going to say they don't work. If you want to give it a go, look, it's worth a shot. But for me personally, I've called in hinds just squeaking with my mouth, So look, for me, yeah, I'm not sure. I've always been torn about that. I don't know, man.
It's one of those things, like I've seen so many good videos of people calling them in, and I do really like one Paul Bogues did where he's out there just explaining how to use it, and he gives it a few, blows, and then all of a sudden gets honked behind him. And he's not up there with a rifle. He's just up there filming. And it's really good just to say, hey, yeah, it does work. So
yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, I like the idea of being able to give him a crack and see what happens. And look, I personally feel you don't have anything to lose, especially, if you're sitting out there all day and nothing's working, why not?
Look, personally for me, a little bit of loud noise is not going to blow a deer out anyway. I mean, even if they're not going to come in, I feel like a few squeaks on the whistle or, a little chat with your mate in the bush, it's not going to blow a deer out of the system. It'll put them on alert, but if they can't see or smell you, they're not going to go anywhere, for me personally.
It's funny, we talk about their sense. And I've said it for a long time. I honestly have had encounters where I haven't spooked them with a little bit of noise or, shutting a car door or anything like that. And if the wind is right, they're not as skittish.
Yep.
And they're not jumping as much.
Yep, definitely.
And if you can get that right, it is probably the one and only thing that you really, really, really need to focus on.
Yeah.
All the other things, I think sometimes people don't understand when I'm saying, I'm not preaching go through the bush whacking things with baseball bats to make noise.
No,
I'm just saying that I don't feel that some of the noises that we make are as, I guess, deer don't react to some of those noises that we make, which are maybe not, I don't know, it just seems like we talk about it, and when you talk, I posted something on Facebook the other day and had some good dialogue with a few different people in regards to deer getting hit by cars.
Yep.
And you're talking about these deer that are really skittish, and, we go out of our way to minimize every noise. And I'm not saying don't do that, but I'm saying we do all these things, but then how many deer get hit by cars? How many deer get hit by cars at night that have big beams of light coming off them and make a lot of noise as they're traveling? Something's got to give there. So they obviously don't see cars as this predator, or they don't know what they are, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But then I feel that if they smell you, silhouette you, see you to an extent that you're standing right out, they are more likely to go. And I honestly feel it's something that's more ancestral. It's like it's just been passed down in their DNA that we are a predator.
I think so. At the end of the day, back in their home country, they're getting chased by tigers. So they sort of need to have that instinct, pretty much get the out of there when they have to.
It is one of those things. I look at it and just go, it baffles me, and also just intrigues the hell out of me. They are so elusive. People talk about how hard they are to get, and people have chased a long time. And I was watching on Facebook, a bloke got one in the state forest. He got a cracker. It was the first deer he's got in 20 years.
I did see that one.
That was a monster. Super awesome.
I think it was something pine. He went 30 or something, I think.
I'm pretty sure it was pine, yeah. So
cracker. Good deal.
Yeah, very, very impressive. And shout out, I can't remember who tagged me in it, so I don't want to get it wrong, but thank you for putting me onto that post, because that was really impressive. And first year in 20 years, even more impressive. And what a way to open the account after 20 years.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Get back to the account maybe. Yeah, everyone just has different ways and different styles, as I said. So it's really interesting hearing those different ways, because you know, I'd love to get down there and do Errol Mason's course at some stage, but this is the next closest thing, is the podcast, talking to people. And I thought, what a great opportunity before I shoot a weight to have that chat with people that are knocking them over or have some experience or doing well, because that is important. So you've been out and got a couple lately, haven't you?
Yes, I've shot 2 stags over the past 2 weeks. And back on the topic of, you know, deer being very curious and being able to get away with a bit of noise. The last stag I shot last week, that stag saw me clear as day. He was bedded on the ridge and I was coming up the ridge, and I bumped him at about 20 meters. He got up out of his bed, saw me, honked at me, and took off and crossed the gully. And a lot of people I found, especially newbies coming into the game, they bump a deer, get honked, the deer takes off, they put their head down and they start trudging. You know what I mean? Like, for me personally, 90% of the time, if you bump a deer, it's going to run 50, 100 meters, stop and turn around and have a look again. They're just very curious. And this stag did that. I mean, he saw me clear as day at about 20 meters. You know, I was walking through the open, he was looking at me, and that was my mistake, not looking up on the ridge. Anyway, he crossed over the ridge, went down, up the other side. I quickly made it to the ridge, and I just caught the glimpse of a deer on the other side and a little bit of antler, and that was enough for me. So, if I was someone who didn't know that and was new, I would have got honked, saw the deer run away, and probably walked the other way. So it's just another thing to keep in mind. If you bump a deer, it doesn't mean the game's over. There's a good chance you're going to see the deer again.
Do you find if you bump something, you sit and stay still and just wait?
Yes. I find if I'm getting honked at, I like to sit still, because on more than one occasion, I've had deer honk at me and walk up to me. Like I posted a video, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where I had a hind honking at me, and I was just standing there, and she actually walked up to about 10 meters.
You're right.
But if I bump a deer, if the wind's in my back, personally, I just don't bother.
Yeah, it's game over.
If the wind's in my back, I pick a new area to hunt, or I change my game plan, because I've never seen an animal with a nose as strong as a sambar for me. I could be wrong. I mean, I don't chase many other deer species. I mean, I shot a few fallow, but for me, those things are insane.
Yeah, and it's just curious, because I know I have seen so many videos and people that have bumped them, or those videos where they're standing there just honking and stomping, and they're not fleeing. And there's some great footage of it out there from such a vast array of people too.
Yeah.
And I understand that that's that curiosity side. And, you know, if you bump them, is there the possibility just sit down, chill out, wait, because they might come back to see what you are. I've said it with fallow plenty of time, is that you might bump them and they run maybe 40, 50 meters, stop, turn around to have a glimpse and see what's going on.
Yep.
And if you're, in a bit of space or got that nice open country, it's a lot easier to see them, depending where you hunt and different terrain and whatnot. Do you find you have a bit of a pattern between pine forest, between native, between fringe country?
I feel like it's very, very similar. Personally, I think pine might be a touch easier to hunt. And for me, the reason for that for me is in the pine, there's no feed. There's nothing on the bottom of that pine. It's pine needles, brown pine needles. So if deer are living in the pine and need a feed, they need to leave the pine, unless there's little pockets in the pine of grass, which there is sometimes. The deer can feed on that, but apart from that, they sort of need to break cover. But if they're pressured, I find a lot of deer in the pine do turn nocturnal very quickly.
And that makes sense. Again, they're trying to do everything to stay alive. That's what they're good at doing, and that's what they're going to be doing all the time. So I can understand that point, especially with a lot of hunting pressure. And you see that, I've seen that a lot in areas where I hunt and there's a lot of hunting pressure, being public land. And all of a sudden the trail cams are picking them up and 90% of the videos are all nighttime.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I find it doesn't take much for a deer to go nocturnal for me. Look, I've hunted little blocks, and when I first started hunting them, there was deer everywhere at all times of the day. You know, I hunted it hard for probably 3 or 4 months, and like a flick of a switch, they all turned nocturnal. And it wasn't until I stopped hunting that area for probably 5-6 months where I started to see them come back out during the day. But look, it does happen. But back to your question, I think the fundamentals of hunting, state forest and pine and whatever it is, it's all pretty much the same.
You've had quite a few close sort of encounters What scope are you running to be able to have that and be able to pull those shots off comfortably?
Believe it or not, I have not got a scope.
So you're running 9 sights?
No. I've got a scope, but my scope is not made for that stuff. On my on the gun, I run 90% of the time the 300 Weatherby mag. It's a Leopold. I believe it's a Leopold varmint. Yeah, I think it's a Leopold varmint. It's a 4.5 to 14. For me personally, it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much. Because when a deer breaks in front of you at 15 meters, it does take a little bit. It takes a little bit to get into it. So that's why lately you've probably seen I've been trying a few new rifles out, like the 7mm Ren mag. I've been shooting a little bit, which my brother-in-law Frankie's been kind enough to lend me a couple of times, and he's lent that to me twice, and I've shot 2 good deer. So I think you should stop doing that. Definitely if someone's chasing a scope for bush stalking, I'd go with a very low magnification. It's going to make life a shitload easier.
Look, I'm lucky enough on the 308, I grabbed the Zero Tech, and it's the 2.5 by, off the top of my head, I think it's 15. Could be wrong there. Been a long day. And the 2.5 I notice is really nice for if something's popping up nice and close. So I think that I'm happy with that gun to chase Sambar on this trip, because I think that magnification, keeping it on the lowest setting all the time, just in case if I'm going to be stalking those game trails. And then it's also got that magnification if I'm off, I've got a couple of gullies that I really want to test out.
Yep.
And, there's 200 metres or so across. So I do like the idea of having that magnification across for a shot like that rather than lower. So, yeah, I think it's just finding a scope that you're comfortable with in any good magnification range that you like and think's going to suit your style of hunting, because there are so many various options and ways to hunt as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And look, on a rifle I've got a red dot scope on one of my rifles too. And for me personally, just about any shot you can make with a scope, you can make with a red dot sight if you know how to use it. And I've taken a lot of deer with the red dot sight. But when a deer breaks in front of you at 10, 15 metres, that's when it comes into its own. Like, you can get shots away so fast. And I feel like every salmon hunter should probably have one, I reckon.
I actually really like them. I've got one on...
I love them. I think they're fantastic, personally.
Yeah, they're great fun. So easy, too. Like, I'm a big fan. I'm pretty like my one. Not sure if yours got the same, but you're able to increase or decrease the brightness of the actual dot. That helps out too, depending what you're shooting and what you're aiming for. I know when I'm shooting smaller game, I can dial it right down to the really lowest level, and it gives you that more precise shot. Whereas if it's something big like a deer, you can just throw it up nice and high, and you've got that nice big bright big red dot for that close sort of quarters sort of shot and things like that. So I'm actually a big fan because they're really easy to use. Nice and light is the other thing. So if you're hiking around up in thick country, they are definitely something to look at and go, hey, it's a nice light option. If you're wanting to try and reduce some of that weight on that steeper terrain too. Yeah,
look, I've always been a huge fan of the red dot, and I find being able to brighten and dull the red dot helps on the brightness of the day sort of thing. So if it's a rainy, shitty day, like you can have that thing on 1 and you can see that clear as day. And, on a sunny day, you might have to pump it up to 6 or 7. I mean, because that sun's a bit bright. But, yeah, I love them. I've shot plenty of deer, and I don't think I'll be getting rid of that anytime soon, that's for sure.
Is that the perfect sort of setup for you? Like, I have that on the rifle. What would be your go-to caliber for chasing sambar?
Go-to caliber? Oof. My go-to or a caliber that never fails?
Both. Give us both.
Look, for me, a 30-06 has been around for years and years and years and years. A lot of people say you need a cannon. A lot of people say you don't need it. But for me, it's tried, it's tested, it's proven. 30-06. I mean, it's gonna, if hit well, it's gonna drop any deer you shoot with it. Personally, for me, I shoot a 300 Weatherby mag and sometimes even a 375 H&H for sambar. But that's because I've lost too many deer and I'm paranoid now. So I like to shoot a little bit of a bigger pill. But look, man, don't get me wrong, even with a 375 H&H, if a deer's hit poor, you're going to lose it. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you're shooting a 500 nitro. If you hit a deer shit, good luck. You know what I mean? But like you said, I'm pretty sure you said you shoot a 308?
Yeah, 308.
There you go. I shot my 28 with big tops last year with a 308, and he went 40 metres and rolled over. And I've shot deer with my 375, tracked them for 400 metres and lost them and budged right up.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's all shot placement. Whatever gun you got will work fine. Even if it's a 270, I don't care. You know what I mean? As long as the bullet is where it needs to be, you're going to be fine.
I think that's key. Is that the more people I talk to, especially I'm lucky enough to have a couple of mates that are really good shooters and quite knowledgeable, and they do a lot of hunting, a lot of shooting, and that is exactly what they say all the time. It's shot placement.
That's it.
If you're a good shot, your marksmanship skills are solid, and you know where you're going to put that bullet, and you put it on the vitals, mate. That's what you need to do. So, definitely something there for anyone out there. I think shot placement is the key. Yeah. And as I said, if you hit it wrong just because it's a higher caliber, yes, it's probably going to do more damage, but doesn't mean that the animal's going to go down if it's a bad shot and it hits somewhere it shouldn't. So,
that's right.
It's one of those things that very first thing should be marksmanship principles.
Yeah. Another thing to think about when shooting deer is I feel like projectile choice is a very important subject too. Like personally myself, I shoot Barnes real hard copper bullet, whereas I've got mates of mine who want to kill me because of it, and they're shooting a softer bullet like your Hornet Interlock, like your Remington Corlocks and whatnot. And personally for me, they're both fantastic. But Corlocks have probably shot more deer than any projectile out there. But everyone's got their preference. But I would definitely look into a projectile that's going to suit your sort of hunting. It's no secret like an LDX or a Hornet LDX, they're made for sort of long distance shooting. And Barnes, I find if you're shooting deer real close, they do zip through them. And sometimes that's no good. Whereas at distance, I find the Barnes work a lot better. Interesting.
I'm a big fan of copper bullets.
Yep.
So interesting to hear you say that. And yes, I think there's a lot of information out there up and down about them. I personally am a big fan and I like the idea, but I have definitely seen some reviews and heard some things that if they're up close, that they're less likely to mushroom and go through the deer straight away.
Yeah, I've had that problem before in the past, yeah.
And that's more close distance, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I've had pretty tricky tracking jobs shooting deer like sub 30 meters with the Barnes. Like a real hard copper bull. I mean, it's sort of expected. And, shooting the surrounded Weatherby, it's so fast. Like it's expected to zip through it, whereas at like 30, 40 meters, with like a Remington Corlock, so soft, it's going to destroy the thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like bush stalking, if it's real tight stuff, short, sharp stuff, softer ball's probably the way to go. Whereas I find the Barnes perform a lot better at distance.
Yeah. I think it's Atomic 29. There was a real good review someone put up, and they were pulling out the copper bullets and showing them how they expanded and mushroomed. And yes. I'm pretty sure the best one, don't quote me, it's been a while, but I think it was 50 meters was the Atomic 29.
Yeah.
And it had a very impressive break up into that mushroom. Quite thick, would have done a lot of damage. It was a lot better than, I think the others. I think it was a Barnes projectile.
Yep.
And there was another brand, but the winner, or the one that was the best by his testing, was definitely the Atomic 29. I'm confident of that because I looked straight into them, which is a little Aussie company here too, which is even better. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of copper. Definitely want to start reloading and start using copper a bit more. It's just one of those things, trying to find the time to get all that sorted. But
yeah, look, everyone's got their preference. Everyone's got their preference when it comes to projectiles, but as long as you do your research and try and pick what's suiting your hunting style the best, you don't have any dramas, I don't think.
And once you look, at the end of the day, as long as you're putting deer down, and it sounds silly, but none of us want to hurt it even though we're trying to kill it, but we don't want it to suffer. Yeah. We want to put it down nice and cleanly, make it ethical. So whatever works for you to do that and make it as quick and ethical as possible, hey, go for it. Like, I'm a big fan of that. I always like to joke around about the 6.5 Creedmoor and stir up a couple of boys about the 270, but the reality is, hey, shoot what you want. As long as it's legal, especially down there in Vic, you've obviously got your caliber restrictions for different animals. So that makes sense down there. Here, they're recommended minimums in New South Wales. People get confused about that some of the time, is that it's a recommended caliber. It's not. You don't need, if it says above 243, you don't need to shoot it with a 243 or above. It's recommended. Now, I personally think the bigger the better for a lot of stuff. Like, yes, you don't want to destroy meat and have it thrown out, but it's probably going to put that animal down faster and better as well. So it's trying to find that nice balance between ethical, humane. Also, you want to put it down so you don't track it for ages too. Like that's a big one. Not wanting to search for 100, 200 meters because it was too small to do the job and you just got it in the wrong place slightly. The bigger caliber may have, fixed that problem for you.
Yeah, and I'm definitely with you. Look, I found that shooting like a 270 or a 306, which I have like a 308. I find if you're shooting a deer through the shoulders, you're gonna lose meat regardless. So for me, if you're shooting a 308 at a deer through the shoulders, or you're shooting a 375 H&H at a deer through the shoulders, 90% of the shoulder's gone anyway. Know what I mean? So for me, I feel like that's not so much of an issue is losing meat, because you're always going to lose a bit of meat if you're shooting deer through the shoulders. But I definitely prefer a bigger caliber for that. It just makes life a bit easier after the shot. Yeah,
makes sense. So what's plans coming up, mate? You've got 2 on the deck in the last 2 weeks, so I'm guessing you don't have an issue for meats.
Nah, definitely not an issue for me. I'll be out there. I'll be out and about. I sort of make my decisions sort of last sec. I'm not really a plan a trip 3 months before sort of person. I hate that personally. I hate thinking about a trip 3 months. So I ain't got to wait for it. So, I finish work pretty early, jump in the car and, take off for the Arvo. So, hopefully do a trip around the start of August, around my birthday. So, it'll be good for a week or so.
Yeah, happy days. So, bullet and barrel.
Yep.
Going to be doing another run shortly. Is it the same sort of stuff? You're going to go out and branch out a little bit more, try something new?
I feel like it'll be the same sort of stuff for now because it sold out pretty quick last time.
Yep.
So we'll do that and then further on, I think we'll expand a little bit.
Sounds good, mate. Alrighty, well, look, I'm going to put all the links in the show notes so everybody can find your stuff. Mate, really appreciate you coming on and having a chat and a couple of tips there for my upcoming hunt. Hopefully, I'll be able to get a Sambar on the deck. We will wait and see. More importantly, I hope Frank doesn't. And yes, Frank, I know you're listening. Do not care. Yes, I said it. I hope that your cousin and brother get one before you. I'm standing by that. Cannot wait to get down there, though, with the boys. There's a couple of surprise people coming down too, so it's going to be quite a great trip. But, yeah, I get where you're coming from because I'm sitting there. We've had this organised for a while now, and I'm just been counting down the days, and it's like torture, but it's also – well, look, in one sense it's been wonderful because I've just sat back and our messenger group has been absolutely hilarious with people taking the piss out of each other. So I'm enjoying that element of it, but I also just want to get down there and hunt and have some time in the bush. And if hopefully I'll be one of the people there that get lucky. Hopefully we all do, to be honest. As much as I stir Frank up, I really want him to get a Sambar. And I'm actually really concerned for him. If he doesn't, he's indicating dog's going to leave him. So, look, that's a big one for me. Joan's sick of being disappointed. Hopefully he can turn the tables and impress her because, it's not looking good for him. But... Mate, appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. As I said, all the links in the show notes. Guys, hope you enjoyed it, and bye for now.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
If you have a topic, guest, question, or any gear that you want to hear about on the podcast, shoot us an email, australianhuntingandbeyond@gmail.com. Alternatively, find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All the links are in the show notes. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a review and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.